Notorious B.I.G.
Going, they're gonna take my spot, they mistaken. You know what I'm saying? My spot is wedged in and it ain't gonna say, but I'd rather rock for 20,000, you know what I'm saying, before I do 2,000.
And you're so large now, it's like we can't even contact you. You know what it, you know
we
what
tried calling, by the way.
March 9th, 1997, 12:45 a.m., Los Angeles, California. A black Chevrolet Suburban rolls to a stop at a red light on Wilshire Boulevard. Inside sits one of hip-hop's biggest stars, just minutes away from becoming its most tragic legend. A dark Impala pulls up alongside. The window rolls down, and in an instant, everything changes. This is the story of Christopher Wallace, the kid from Brooklyn who became Biggie Smalls, the rapper who became the Notorious B.I.G, the man who changed hip-hop forever, only to have his life stolen at just 24 years old. But this isn't just about how he died. This is about how he lived, what he meant, and why his murder remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in music history. Before there was the Notorious B.I.G., there was Christopher George Latter Wallace, born May 21, 1972, in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York. His mother, Valletta Wallace, worked 2 jobs as a preschool teacher to keep her son off the streets. His father left when Christopher was just 2 years old. Growing up in Bed-Stuy during the crack epidemic of the 80s and early 90s wasn't easy. Poverty, violence, and drugs surrounded him every single day. But young Christopher was different. His teachers noticed he was exceptionally bright, winning English awards in middle school. He loved to read and had a gift with words that was undeniable. By his teenage years, though, the streets called louder than the classroom. He started dealing drugs on the corners of Brooklyn at just 12 years old. By 17, he dropped out of high school. By 19, he'd been arrested in North Carolina on drug charges and spent 9 months in jail. That jail time changed everything. Behind bars, Christopher made a decision. He was going to rap his way out of the hood or die trying. He started performing on street corners, going by the name Biggie Smalls, inspired by a character from a 1975 film. His reputation grew block by block, corner by corner. He had a voice that commanded attention, deep and powerful. His lyrics painted vivid pictures of street life with a storytelling ability nobody had heard before. Word spread, and in 1992, his demo tape ended up in the hands of Sean Combs, a young producer at Uptown Records who would later become known as Puff Daddy, then P. Diddy, and now simply Diddy. The Rise. By 1994, the Notorious B.I.G. released his debut album, Ready to Die, on Bad Boy Records, the new label Sean Combs had founded after leaving Uptown. The album was an instant classic. It told the story of Christopher Wallace's life from birth to his present-day struggles with depression, success, and survival. Songs detailed his criminal past, his fears, his ambitions, and his raw talent for crafting narratives. The production was polished but still gritty. The lyrics were street but sophisticated. Biggie had a flow that was effortless, almost conversational, yet incredibly complex. He could switch from hardcore street tailies to smooth player anthems without missing a beat. Critics loved it. The streets loved it. Hip-hop had found its new king of New York. Biggie's size was part of his presence. Standing 6'3" and weighing over 300 pounds, he was literally larger than life. He wore designer clothes, luxury jewelry, and carried himself with a confidence that made him magnetic. But behind the bravado was a thoughtful artist who took his craft seriously. He would write entire verses in his head, memorizing complex rhyme patterns without ever writing them down. Studio engineers were amazed at his ability to record complete songs in just 1 or 2 takes. His success changed his life overnight. The kid who grew up on welfare was now making real money. He bought his mother a house in New Jersey. He wore Versace suits and Rolex watches. He drove luxury cars and partied with celebrities. But success came with complications. His relationship with his childhood sweetheart fell apart. His marriage to R&B singer Faith Evans was turbulent. And his friendship with Tupac Shakur, the West Coast rapper who had become like a brother to him, was about to become his greatest regret. The split, East Coast vs. West Coast. In the mid-90s, hip-hop was dividing. What started as regional rivalry between New York and Los Angeles was becoming something darker, more dangerous, more personal. On one side stood Death Row Records, led by Suge Knight, with Tupac Shakur as their biggest star. On the other side was Bad Boy Records, led by Sean Combs, with the Notorious B.I.G. as their champion. Biggie and Tupac had been friends, real friends. When Tupac first came to New York in the early 90s, Biggie welcomed him. They performed together, hung out together, talked about collaborating on music together. But on November 30th, 1994, everything changed. Tupac was shot 5 times in the lobby of Quad Recording Studios in Manhattan. He survived, but he was convinced that Biggie and Sean Combs had something to do with it, or at least knew it was going to happen. Biggie denied this completely. He said he had no knowledge of the attack and would never hurt his friend. Tupac didn't believe him. From his perspective, the shooting happened in New York, in Bad Boys territory, and nobody warned him. The friendship was over. The war was on. Tupac signed with Death Row Records after being released from prison in 1995. He immediately began releasing aggressive songs targeting Biggie, Sean Combs, and the entire East Coast hip-hop scene. One song in particular crossed every line imaginable. Tupac claimed to have had relations with Faith Evans, Biggie's wife. Whether true or not, the claim devastated Biggie personally and enraged him publicly. The media fueled the fire. Every interview became about the beef. Every award show had tension. Magazines framed it as a war. Radio stations picked sides. Fans picked sides. Behind the scenes, things were getting dangerous. There were rumors of gang affiliations on both sides. Death Row had connections to the Blood Street Gang in Los Angeles. Bad Boy had connections to the Crips. Violence was becoming inevitable. Biggie tried to downplay it publicly. In interviews, he said he had no issues with Tupac personally, and that the whole situation was being blown out of proportion by media and record executives who saw dollar signs in controversy. But privately, he was worried. He told friends that he feared for his safety. He knew that words had consequences, and in the streets, consequences meant violence. September 7, 1996, the night everything changed. September 7, 1996, Las Vegas, Nevada. Tupac Shakur attended the Mike Tyson vs. Bruce Seldon boxing match at the MGM Grand Hotel with Suge Knight, the CEO of Death Row Records. After the fight, they got into a physical altercation with a known gang member in the hotel lobby. Security cameras caught everything. Hours later, around 11:15 p.m., Tupac and Suge were driving down Las Vegas Boulevard in a black BMW. They stopped at a red light at the intersection with Flamingo Road. A white Cadillac pulled up alongside them. Someone inside opened fire. 13 shots were fired into the passenger side where Tupac was sitting. 4 bullets hit him, one striking him in the chest, another in his pelvis. Suge Knight was grazed by a bullet fragment but survived. Tupac was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. For 6 days, he fought for his life. His mother, his friends, and the entire hip-hop community held their breath, hoping he would pull through. On September 13, 1996, Tupac Shakur died from his injuries. He was only 25 years old. The hip-hop world was in shock. The West Coast had lost its biggest star. Death Row Records had lost its champion, and the Notorious B.I.G. had lost someone who was once his friend. Immediately, fingers pointed in every direction. Some blamed the gang member from the hotel. Some blamed East Coast rappers. Some blamed internal Death Row conflicts. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire. Biggie was in New York when Tupac died. He released a statement saying he had nothing to do with it and that he was saddened by the loss. But many people on the West Coast didn't believe him. They wanted revenge. Sean Combs advised Biggie to stay away from Los Angeles. The city was too dangerous, Tensions were too high, and their presence would only make things worse. For months, Biggie listened. But by early 1997, he felt like he couldn't hide forever. He had a new album coming out called Life After Death, and he needed to promote it. He needed to show he wasn't afraid. He needed to prove he could still move freely. So, against warnings from friends and family, the Notorious B.I.G. decided to go to Los Angeles. The final days, Los Angeles, March 1997. Biggie arrived in Los Angeles in early March 1997. He was there primarily to promote his upcoming album and work on some music projects. But he was also there to show that he wouldn't be intimidated. The atmosphere in LA was tense. Death Row Records was still powerful, and Tupac's murder was still fresh. Many in the West Coast hip-hop community blamed East Coast artists for his death, even without evidence. Despite the tension, Biggie tried to keep things professional and positive. He did radio interviews where he spoke respectfully about Tupac and tried to de-escalate the narrative that there was some ongoing war. On the night of March 8, 1997, Biggie attended the Soul Train Music Awards at the Shrine Auditorium. He didn't win any awards, but he networked, took photos, and represented Bad Boy Records. After the awards show, there was an after-party planned at the Peterson Automotive Museum on Wilshire Boulevard. It was a star-studded event hosted by Vibe magazine and Q West Records. Everyone who was anyone in hip-hop was expected to be there. Biggie arrived at the party with his entourage, including Sean Combs and several Bad Boy Records associates. Security was tight, but the vibe was celebratory. Inside, people were dancing, drinking, and enjoying the music. However, the party was overcrowded. Fire marshals shut it down early due to safety concerns. Around 12:30 a.m., everyone started filing out of the museum and heading to their vehicles. Biggie was exhausted but in good spirits. He was ready to head back to his hotel. His new album was set to release in just 2 weeks, and he was excited about the future. He had no idea he only had minutes left to live. March 9, 1997, the murder. It was just after 12:30 a.m. when the Notorious B.I.G. left the Peterson Automotive Museum. He climbed into the passenger seat of a black Chevrolet Suburban driven by his friend and fellow Bad Boy Records artist, Gregory Young, known as G-Money. Sean Combs was in another vehicle in front of them. Security guards were in vehicles behind them. They formed a small convoy as they headed east on Wilshire Boulevard toward the Fairfax district. Traffic was heavy because of the party letting out. The convoy moved slowly. At the intersection of Wilshire Boulevard and South Fairfax Avenue, they stopped at a red light. Biggie sat in the passenger seat, relaxed, probably thinking about the hotel, the upcoming album release, or maybe calling his family when he got back. Then a dark-colored Chevrolet Impala SS pulled up directly to the right of their SUV, right next to Biggie's window. A black male in a blue suit and bow tie rolled down his window. He raised a 9mm blue steel pistol. And he fired. 4 shots rang out in rapid succession. All 4 bullets hit Christopher Wallace. He was struck in the chest, shoulder, leg, and abdomen. The bullets tore through vital organs. The Impala sped off into the night, disappearing into Los Angeles traffic. G-Money immediately drove Biggie to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, just blocks away. Security and Bad Boy associates followed, desperate, praying, hopping. But the damage was too severe. The Notorious B.I.G. was pronounced dead at 1:15 a.m. on March 9, 1997. He was just 24 years old. His second album, Life After Death, would be released exactly 2 weeks later, on March 25th, as a tragic and prophetic title. A Murder Unsolved, the murder of the Notorious B.I.G. sent shockwaves through the music industry and beyond. Within 6 months, hip-hop had lost its 2 biggest stars. Tupac on the West Coast, Biggie on the East Coast, both killed by gunfire, both murders unsolved. The Los Angeles Police Department launched an investigation immediately, but it quickly became complicated. There were witnesses, but their stories conflicted. There was speculation, but little hard evidence. There were theories, but no arrests. Some believed it was retaliation for Tupac's murder, carried out by West Coast gang members loyal to death row records. Others suspected corrupt police officers might have been involved. Some thought Suge Knight orchestrated it. Others believed it was random violence unrelated to the East Coast-West Coast rivalry. Biggie's mother, Voletta Wallace, fought for justice for years. She filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles, claiming the LAPD covered up evidence and mishandled the investigation. The case went on for over a decade, with multiple mistrials and appeals. To this day, no one has been arrested or convicted for the murder of the Notorious B.I.G. It remains one of the most infamous unsolved cases in American history. But while his killer was never found, his legacy lived on. Life After Death, released posthumously, became one of the best-selling hip-hop albums of all time. It debuted at #1 and eventually went diamond, selling over 10 million copies. Critics called it a masterpiece. Fans called it a fitting farewell. Songs from that album became anthems. His influence shaped an entire generation of rappers. Artists from Jay-Z to Eminem to Kendrick Lamar have cited Biggie as a major inspiration. His storytelling ability, his flow, his voice, and his presence changed what hip-hop could be. He proved that a rapper could be raw and sophisticated, street and commercial, feared and beloved all at the same time. Christopher Wallace lived only 24 years, but in that short time, he became immortal. He went from selling drugs on Brooklyn corners to selling millions of records worldwide. He went from sleeping on floors to buying his mother a house. He went from being unknown to becoming the Notorious B.I.G., a name that will forever be synonymous with hip-hop greatness. His death was a tragedy that robbed the world of an incredible talent. We'll never know what other albums he would have made, what other stories he would have told, what other artists he would have influenced directly. But we do know what he left behind: a blueprint for storytelling in rap, a standard for lyrical excellence, a catalog of music that still sounds fresh decades later, and a reminder that life is short, beef is pointless, and violence solves nothing. The East Coast-West Coast rivalry died with Biggie and Tupac. No one wanted to see another talented young artist gunned down over pride and territory. Hip-hop changed after 1997. It became more collaborative, more business-focused, less dangerous. Today, rappers from New York work with rappers from Los Angeles without a second thought. The rivalry is just history now, a cautionary tale told to remind people what happens when egos and violence mix. If Biggie could speak to us today, he'd probably tell us to stop the violence, support each other, and focus on the music. He'd probably tell young artists to stay out of beef, protect their peace, and remember that no amount of street credibility is worth your life. Christopher Wallace became Biggie Smalls, who became the Notorious B.I.G., who became a legend. His story is a tragedy, but it's also an inspiration. A kid from the projects became one of the greatest to ever touch a microphone. Rest in peace to the Notorious B.I.G. gone, but never, ever forgotten.